Family is supposed to be the place where you never have to earn your seat. Mine turned it into something that could be taken away. My name is Emily Carter. I was 35 years old, a widow, and the proud mother of the sweetest 7-year-old boy in the world. His name was Oliver. 3 years earlier, my husband, David, kissed us goodbye on a rainy Monday morning before leaving for work at a construction site. He never came home. A support beam collapsed during an accident that investigators later ruled unavoidable. The phone call came just after lunch. I still remember dropping my coffee mug onto the kitchen floor when I heard the words, "I'm so sorry." Everything after that became a blur. The funeral, the sympathy cards, the endless paperwork, the overwhelming silence after everyone else returned to their normal lives. Except ours. Oliver was only 4 years old. For weeks, he kept asking when Daddy was coming home. Each time, I felt my heart break all over again. Money became tight almost immediately. David had always been careful with finances, but no amount of planning could prepare us for losing half our household income overnight. I sold our second car, canceled every unnecessary subscription, moved into a smaller townhouse closer to Oliver's school. During the day, I worked as a freelance bookkeeper from my dining room table. At night, after Oliver fell asleep, I completed tax reports and payroll records for small businesses until 2 or 3 in the morning. It wasn't glamorous, but every bill got paid. Every lunchbox stayed full. Every birthday still had cake, even if it was homemade. Oliver never complained. If anything, he became even more thoughtful. Whenever I apologized for not being able to afford something expensive, he always smiled and said, "It's okay, Mom. I already have everything." Then he'd hug me so tightly that, for a moment, all the exhaustion disappeared. My younger sister, Vanessa, lived in a completely different world. She had married Brandon Collins, the owner of several successful restaurants. Luxury vacations filled her social media. Designer handbags appeared every birthday. Weekend brunches took place at country clubs instead of neighborhood cafes. At first, none of that bothered me. People are allowed to enjoy success. What hurt was how success slowly changed Vanessa. Every family gathering became an opportunity for comparison. She'd compliment someone's shoes only to mention hers cost twice as much. She'd ask about my business before casually reminding everyone how Brandon's newest restaurant was expanding into another city. Mom usually laughed. "That's just Vanessa. She doesn't mean anything by it." Dad remained silent. Keeping peace had become easier than confronting uncomfortable truths. Still, I continued showing up. Birthdays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, because Oliver deserved to know his grandparents and cousins, and because I kept believing my sister would eventually become the person she used to be. Then Vanessa announced she was expecting her first baby. The entire family celebrated. Mom cried happy tears. Dad immediately started planning fishing trips with his future grandchild. Vanessa glowed with excitement. For a little while, even I forgot how strained our relationship had become. Mom insisted on hosting the biggest baby shower our family had ever seen. She rented an elegant event hall overlooking the river. Fresh flowers, live musicians, professional photographers. Everything had to be perfect. Invitations were mailed nearly a month in advance. Mine arrived more than a week after everyone else's. I dismissed the uneasy feeling. Maybe the mail had been delayed. Maybe it was nothing. 2 days before the shower, Vanessa called. "Emily." "Yes. I wanted to mention something." "What is it?" "We're asking everyone to wear neutral designer clothing." I laughed softly. "You know I don't own designer clothes." There was an awkward pause. "Well, just wear something tasteful. I have a navy blue dress." "Is it new?" "No. I've had it about 3 years." Another pause. "I guess it'll have to do." When the call ended, I stared at my phone for a long time. Part of me wanted to skip the event entirely. Another part reminded me that this wasn't about me. It was about welcoming a new baby into the family. The night before the shower, Oliver sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by crayons. "I'm making something for baby Lily." He worked carefully for almost an hour. When he finally finished, he proudly handed me his drawing. It showed a smiling baby in a stroller surrounded by balloons. Beside the stroller stood our entire family holding hands. Even David was included, drawn as a smiling angel watching from the clouds. At the bottom, Oliver had written in large, uneven letters, "Welcome, baby Lily. We already love you." Tears filled my eyes. "It's beautiful. Do you think Aunt Vanessa will like it?" "I'm sure she will." He smiled proudly. Can you tell the baby I drew it? I will. The following afternoon, I put on my navy blue dress. It wasn't expensive, but it was clean, elegant, and one David had always said brought out my eyes. Oliver hugged me before I left. You look pretty. Thank you, sweetheart. He handed me the drawing inside a carefully decorated envelope. Don't bend it. I won't. As I drove toward the event hall, I quietly reminded myself that today was about celebrating family. I had no idea that before the first gift was opened, my own sister would decide I no longer deserved a seat at her table. For a few long seconds, I simply stared at Vanessa. I waited for her to smile, to laugh, to tell everyone it was a terrible joke. She didn't. Instead, she folded my place card in half, dropped it into the nearby trash can, and looked at me with complete indifference. I'm sorry, she said, although she didn't sound sorry at all. We had to make room for Brandon's business partners. I looked around the room. Every chair was occupied except for the one she had just removed. So you decided the easiest person to exclude was your own sister? Vanessa shrugged. You'll understand someday. I took a slow breath. I understand more than you think. She pointed toward the street outside the large windows. You can always try that dirty pub across the road. Several guests laughed nervously. Others looked embarrassed. No one spoke. Not my mother. Not my father. Not my cousins. The silence hurt almost as much as Vanessa's words. I slowly reached into my purse and removed Oliver's carefully decorated envelope. For a moment, I considered taking it home. Then I remembered how proudly he had handed it to me. He deserved to have his kindness delivered, even if the recipient didn't deserve it. I gently placed the envelope on the growing pile of gifts. I hope one day your daughter grows up surrounded by people who never make her feel unwanted. Without waiting for a response, I turned and walked out of the ballroom. As soon as the doors closed behind me, I finally allowed myself to breathe. The cool afternoon air felt strangely comforting. Across the street stood the little neighborhood pub Vanessa had mocked. Its brick walls were faded. The wooden sign creaked gently in the breeze. Flower boxes beneath the windows overflowed with colorful blossoms. It looked nothing like the glamorous event hall, yet somehow it felt warmer. I crossed the street. A small bell rang as I pushed open the door. Inside, soft music played through old speakers. Several regular customers looked up and smiled politely before returning to their conversations. Behind the counter stood an older woman with silver hair tied into a neat bun. Welcome. Her smile felt genuine. What can I get you? I wasn't hungry. I'll have a cup of coffee. You look like you could use one. She poured the coffee herself and set it in front of me. My name's Margaret. I'm Emily. You don't have to tell me what happened. But if you ever want to, I'm a pretty good listener. Something about her kindness broke the wall I had spent years building. Without mentioning names, I quietly explained what had happened. Margaret listened without interrupting once. When I finished, she shook her head sadly. Anyone who treats family that way has forgotten what family means. An elderly gentleman sitting nearby smiled gently. I heard enough to know one thing. They lost far more than you did today. Before I could respond, my purse slipped from the chair. Oliver's spare copy of the baby drawing slid onto the floor. Margaret picked it up carefully. Oh my. She studied the colorful picture. Did your son draw this? I nodded proudly. He spent almost an hour making it. She smiled. This belongs where people can appreciate it. Before I could object, she framed it using a small display frame hanging behind the counter. Within minutes, several customers admired it. One woman wiped away tears. That's the sweetest thing I've seen all week. For the first time that afternoon, I smiled. About an hour later, heavy rain suddenly poured across the city. Guests from nearby businesses hurried inside the pub to escape the storm. Among them were several people who had attended Vanessa's baby shower. Word about what had happened spread quickly, not because I complained, because people had witnessed it. One of the newcomers quietly introduced himself. I'm Richard Lawson. I own Lawson Hospitality Group. Margaret smiled. Emily's a bookkeeper. Richard raised an eyebrow. Really? We've been looking for someone reliable. He handed me his business card. Call me Monday. We should talk. I thanked him politely. What I thought would be a brief conversation lasted nearly 2 hours. By the end of the week, Richard had hired my bookkeeping company to manage the finances for 3 of his restaurants. Within months, he referred me to several other business owners. One opportunity became another, then another. 2 years passed. My tiny bookkeeping business grew into a respected accounting firm employing 7 people. We had a beautiful office overlooking the same river where Vanessa had held her extravagant baby shower. One rainy afternoon, my receptionist announced an unexpected visitor. Vanessa. She looked different. Less confident. More tired. She quietly sat across from my desk. Brandon's restaurant group is struggling. We need professional accounting help. She looked around my office. I heard you're one of the best. For several moments, neither of us spoke. Finally, she whispered, I owe you an apology. I was cruel. I cared more about appearances than people. She lowered her eyes. I've regretted that baby shower ever since. I looked at her calmly. I accepted long ago that I couldn't change what happened. She nodded. I know. But I wanted you to hear me say I was wrong. I accepted her apology. Not because forgetting is easy, but because carrying bitterness forever only hurts the person holding it. That evening, I returned home. Oliver, now older and taller, asked his usual question. How was your day, Mom? I smiled. It reminded me of something important. What's that? The nicest people you'll ever meet aren't always sitting at the fanciest tables. He grinned. Like Miss Margaret? Exactly. Years earlier, my sister believed sending me to a dirty pub would humiliate me. Instead, she unknowingly directed me toward people who valued kindness over status, character over appearances, and compassion over wealth. Sometimes the seat you're denied is simply making room for a better place. One where you're welcomed not because of what you own, but because of who you are.